Hi, this is the plant-based nutritionist Cath King from Seeking Health with another point of view recording, and I've been watching with interest to see what was going to happen to meat consumption after the World Health Organization report came out in October showing processed meats like bacon, sausages and ham to be a class 1 carcinogen and red meat to be a class 2 carcinogen. And just to remind you, a class 1 carcinogen has been shown to definitely be carcinogenic to humans and to cause cancer. A class 2 carcinogen is probably or possibly carcinogenic to humans. And you also need to bear in mind with this report that the World Health Organization is a very conservative organization. It takes a lot of very high quality scientific studies for them to include meat in these two categories. They didn't just pull this out of the air, they really had to be convinced with some very hard evidence. So what's happened since October? Well, the first thing I've noticed is that the meat industry has gone into damage control mode. I've noticed that most of the time when I go to the supermarket these days, I see a free tasting stand set up to encourage people to try and buy meat products. And interesting little story along with that, I usually just ignore these kinds of stands when I'm in stores and just kind of walk on past. But one day, a couple of weeks ago, one of them made the mistake of calling out to me while I was innocently looking for blueberries in the freezer section, and they called out and asked if I wanted to try a piece of sausage. And I'm afraid I couldn't just let that go without comment, and so I actually replied to them. I just felt myself getting quite angry about it and sort of said, "What? You're trying to tempt me to buy those cancer sticks even after you know they're carcinogenic? Now that's not very ethical, is it?" And I think I even wagged my finger at the poor girl in a kind of tut-tut kind of way. So that's the first thing that I've noticed is all of these stands, and I'm trying my best to ignore it because I really don't like that side of myself. I don't like to say those sorts of things to people. And another thing I've noticed is that we've heard many conflicting media reports. And I've got a few that I'd like to mention. 7 Sharp asked, "Is bacon really a killer?" And we had reporter Tim Wilson who waved meat and cigarettes at passers-by in Auckland and blamed trigger-happy media and the headline-happy UN for the cancer confusion. And he said it was common sense that moderate meat consumption couldn't be as bad as smoking. And then he wrapped up the program by telling viewers that this was good news for bacon lovers. And that was a really odd conclusion, I thought, given that higher rates of some cancers have been linked to meat consumption for a very long time. And so what was the upshot of that particular report is that 7 Sharp kind of gave its meat-eating viewers no idea whether they were at greater or lesser risk of cancer than they had previously assumed. And then another one that I noticed was that TV3, their program Story, they posted on social media saying that new research shows red meat and processed meat may have cancer risks, but what does the science actually say? And I have to point out that in fact there was no new research. The World Health Organization just weighed up existing evidence that's been steadily building for decades, and they reclassified red and processed meat on that basis. And we had Heather Duplessis Allen speaking on Radio Live, and she was saying that the World Health Organization had said that meat was as bad as asbestos. And then on TV3 that night, she waved a packet of steak around and said that she would be ignoring the recommended safe limits. And so anyway, having promised to tell viewers what the science actually says on their social media posts, there was, on the story that night, there were no scientists in the show's report. And instead, there was just a reporter, Julian Lee, dressed up in a lab coat. And he cast doubt on the data reviewed by the World Health Organization, and he told viewers that they would not have to worry unless they eat 5 cheap sausages or a packet of bacon a week. And even then, he said, you're more likely to be killed in a car crash going to buy the sausages than getting cancer from them. And he didn't elaborate on how he'd worked that out. And almost 600,000 people in New Zealand watched 7 Sharp and Story on Tuesday, and the presenters and the reporters very much gave them the impression that the World Health Organization had overestimated meat's carcinogenic potential. And there wasn't a single expert present on either program to confirm or contradict that. And we've had all of these jokey reports that have been pitched at consumers of meat. And even though the story concerned our health and the health of the nation and the health of the meat eaters, and none of the stories looked at the broader picture of meat and its role in heart disease, our country's biggest killer, or diabetes, or obesity, or osteoporosis, or any other health issues. They didn't consider the environmental impact of animal agriculture. They didn't consider the animal rights and welfare issues arising from our culture's insistence on eating meat. And they certainly didn't consider that it's perfectly possible to live a healthy life without eating any meat, or that those who don't eat meat live on average 6 to 10 years longer. So that's another thing that I've observed, is this media attention that's been given to it, and that has really been very, I think, confusing for viewers. But has the WHO report, the World Health Organization report, affected people's buying in any way? And it seems that it hasn't, at least not in New Zealand. Sales of processed meat have remained steady all through November. Reports in the United Kingdom say that sales of sausages and bacon have dipped since the report was published, and that a week after the report, the sales of bacon in the UK were down by 16.5%, sausages were down by 13.9%, and other processed meat sales fell by 10%. So at least the Brits are showing some sense. But the report that on meat sales does not appear, or the WHO report rather, does not appear to have affected the buying habits of New Zealanders. And I'm not one to be critical of others. You know, I really believe that we're all just here doing the best that we can. But really, I have to wonder about the intelligence of Kiwis after hearing this. People in New Zealand seem to be so blind when it comes to eating meat. You know, it's such a big part of our culture, and we are so very brainwashed by the meat industry. And obviously I also blame the media. As we've seen, their reporting has been atrocious on it, and also the so-called experts that people trust. You know, we also had the New Zealand Food and Grocery Council Chief Executive Catherine Rich saying, it looks like most New Zealanders understand that eating bacon in moderation is fine, and that eating too much of any food is not healthy. And people believe her. They want to believe her. People love hearing good news about their bad habits, and they will cling tenaciously to any little scrap of evidence allowing them to maintain their addictions. And I'm sorry, but you can eat as much vegetables and fruit as you want to, and you will never get cancer or heart disease. But the everything in moderation style of advice is so comforting, and yet it's so dangerous. And this way of thinking is so ingrained in people's psyche that even when a conservative, reputable organisation like the World Health Organization, who has no financial ties to the food industry, even when they tell us that meat is carcinogenic, there's no decrease in sales. None. And I'm afraid I just don't understand it. I really don't. A class 1 carcinogen in moderation? Really? Just because we can't contemplate giving up our precious meat? Anyway, so that's my point of view for now. And if you enjoy listening, please hit like and share. And I'd love to hear your point of view on this issue. What have you noticed people doing or saying about processed meat since October? And until next time, forget the meat and focus on creating health, happiness and peace for people and for